Terrence Bates here with your Real America's Voice News Break. Thanks so much for being here with us. The government is set to run out of money and shut down at the end of this week unless Congress passes a slate of spending bills and the Senate agrees to them. A number of House Republicans have been pushing continuing resolutions that would keep the government funded for between 30 and 45 more days in order to work out concerns over the appropriations bills. But there is a faction of the party that's ready to act before the deadline or let the government shut down until a responsible spending plan is agreed on.
Saturday, the government will shut down, and it'll be shut down for as long as it takes to get a handle on our spending. And I think some progress is being made just because those of us who are willing to say no.
This week, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is expected to push a plan to win approval of 4 large spending bills, including measures for military and homeland security funding. He hopes getting those bills passed will encourage Republicans who are on the fence about a stopgap spending measure to give in to buy more time. A busy week of campaigning for President Trump kicks off today with a rally this afternoon in South Carolina, which boasts the first in the South primary. The 45th president is headed into primary rival Senator Tim Scott's backyard this afternoon when he rallies supporters in Charleston area. He'll also be taking some thunder away from former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley in her home state, rather than on stage at the GOP debate later this week. Mr. Trump will follow up today's trip with a speech before union members in Michigan on Wednesday and a visit to California Friday to speak to the state's GOP convention. It will be an encore to the GOP primary debate that he's bowing out of 2 days before. Then on Sunday, the former president will travel to Ottawa, Iowa for a Commit to the Caucus event where he'll deliver policy remarks focused on agriculture. Since President Trump won't be at Wednesday's second GOP presidential primary debate at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library there in California, the focus will likely be on Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. DeSantis has suffered a free fall in the polls, and analysts believe the upcoming debate is a make or break for the Florida Republican. That's especially true since a CNN University of New Hampshire poll finds that DeSantis dropped 14 points in New Hampshire last week and now trails Vivek Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley, and Chris Christie in the early voting state. While 9 candidates, including President Trump, qualified for the first debate, only 6 appear to have met the donor and polling thresholds to be on stage Wednesday in California. That list includes DeSantis, Ramaswamy, Haley, Christie, as well as Trump Vice President Mike Pence, and of course President Trump himself, who will be a no-show. New this afternoon, embattled New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez speaking out publicly for the first time since being slapped with bribery charges on Friday.
To those who have rushed to judgment, you have done so based on a limited set of facts framed by the prosecution to be as salacious as possible. Remember, prosecutors get it wrong sometimes. Sadly, I know that.
Menendez and his wife each face 3 criminal counts here. This investigation is the third involving Menendez. He was never or has never been convicted, though. The longtime senator has temporarily stepped down as the chairman of the powerful Senate Foreign Relations Committee. However, he is refusing to resign his office despite calls to do so from the state's Democrat governor, as well as other Democratic state officials. Former President Jimmy Carter has the internet buzzing this morning after he and his wife Rosalind made an appearance at an annual peanut festival in Georgia on Saturday. The 98-year-old and the former First Lady were caught on camera being driven in this SUV in his hometown of Plains, Georgia. The 39th president has recently suffered from several health issues, including melanoma that spread to his liver and his brain. However, Carter has reportedly responded well to treatment. You probably remember back in February, the Carter Center announced that the 98-year-old was set to receive hospice care and, quote, spend his remaining time at home with his family. President Trump headed to Detroit later this week to deliver a speech before the union workers there. It all comes as Detroit's big 3 automakers are facing strikes from the United Auto Workers Union. In all, workers at a combined 41 General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis plants in 20 states are off the job. A majority of the strikes are at GM and Stellantis distribution centers. In the meantime, President Trump will have his work cut out for him this week as he tries to rally support from union workers. Setting the stage and the tone for Wednesday's speech, UAW President Shawn Fain releasing a statement saying in part that he doesn't want President Trump or President Biden to come. That's going to do it for your headlines. I'm Terrence Bates.
Live from the heart of America, I'm Steve Gruber, your soldier of truth. The tip of the spear against socialists here, ready to fight for you from the foxhole of freedom. And please, my friends, remember to think before it's too late. It's the Steve Gruber Show, and here are three big things you need to know to kick off the day right now. Number one, Gold Bar Bob Menendez, the embattled senator from New Jersey, says he will not resign. He says the latest charges against him are just not true. He did not take those bribes. Number two, AOC says Joe Biden is wrong. The economy is in bad shape. In fact, the liberal firebrand called Bidenomics a crisis right now that's hurting the American people. And number three, those are just a couple of the bad headlines that are giving Democrats a severe case of anxiety right now. Trust me, these folks are in panic. The Democrats are taking hits from all directions right now, from the border to corruption charges, some leading all the way to the West Wing, to the failure that is Bidenomics. And as we've been discussing, it is hitting the Democrats hard in the polls. Then yesterday afternoon, Ford Motor Company dropped a major bombshell on the whole EV transition, the whole climate change movement. When Ford announced it would be stopping construction of a controversial $3.5 billion battery plant that's owned in large part by companies with direct ties to the Chinese Communist Party, and those ties to the CCP were already under investigation by Republicans both in Congress and in Michigan. So today, the so-called Blue Oval Battery Park is on ice. And it could mean that other concerning purchases by the Chinese here on American soil could soon be iced as well. In just a moment, Pete Hoekstra will join me, the former House Intelligence Committee chair. He's a critic of all of these Chinese factories, and he'll be here, like I said. But I can tell you, for people around these plants, there's some celebrating going on. It began yesterday. But the concerns over the Chinese setting up shop in America has become just another bipartisan issue, and one the Democrats in Washington are fighting to come to terms with, because ordinary Americans are saying no to all of it. All of it. Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack says there are legitimate concerns. He is in Joe Biden's cabinet. He says there are legitimate concerns when China buys land too close to U.S. military bases, among other things. Listen to this.
Has the Department of Agriculture seen anything in the purchase of farmland by Chinese corporations or Chinese nationals that would suggest a threat to national security or food security? Or are those concerns that we've increasingly been hearing about, are those overblown?
Well, I think there's concern, as there was in the North Dakota circumstance, where the Chinese interest was purchasing land near a military installation. I think there's legitimate concerns in that space, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've articulated the need as a department to be more engaged in the CFIUS process. I would also say that I think there's work to be done to give us the tools to be able to do an even better job of ensuring that we know when these transactions take place. It's complicated, but every county has their county recorder. And on any given day, somebody may walk into that recorder's office and file a deed, and there's no way of knowing precisely whether or not that is a Chinese purchaser. So we need to work on how we might be able to collect the information and be able to analyze that information in a timely way so that we would determine whether or not a threat exists.
And there you have it. How do you determine whether a threat exists or not? This week started off badly enough for Joe Biden. He's on his way now to Detroit, where apparently he's going to walk the picket lines with striking members of the UAW. Strikes now in its 8th day, affecting workers and facilities in 20 states. The union vote in America, as you know, is getting smaller. The support for Joe Biden across the board getting weaker by the day. People looking to the previous president saying those policies were better. You know, the Democrats are wetting the bed, really, when they say things like this about Joe Biden. Listen to this.
Right now, the polls head-to-head are more concerning than I would expect, but I would so much rather be in this position of having an incredible record for our president to run on.
Yeah, more concerning than I would expect at this point. Really, Senator? Yeah, very concerning for you and all of the Democrats, because your policies are failing. We bring in $5 trillion a year in taxes and spend $7 billion. How does that make sense? It doesn't. And you know it's bad when not a single member of the administration can articulate a coherent answer and stick with the idea that everything is great and soon everyone will agree. They'll sing Kumbaya and live happily ever after. Right, go with that. 37% approval. It speaks for the anger of the American people, but apparently it doesn't speak to Karine. Here she is.
37% approved?
I hear you. But it is, look, our focus is going to be on what we can do to continue to deliver for the American people. Polls are polls, right? They are going to be all over the place. They're going to they don't tell the whole story, actually. And that is just the way a poll is.
Well, actually, the polls are becoming more consistent. May I share? The Washington Post poll, called an outlier, had Donald Trump up by 10 points over Joe Biden in a head-to-head election. That was just a couple of days ago. Well, another brand new poll from the Messenger Harris X has Trump +5, which is, if it had been by itself, would have been called an outlier. But guess what? Donald Trump is adding to his lead, not only over the field of Republicans. He's clearly going to be the nominee for the Republican Party unless something bizarre happens, he gets sick or something happens. But he is going to be the nominee for the Republican Party. And right now, he would beat Joe Biden in a walkaway, not even close. And there clearly is no plan for any of the major crises that have blossomed since senile Joe stumbled into the White House. There's no plan for any of it. I mean, it's obvious Biden has no actual plan for Ukraine, except to dump billions of cash and prizes there. No plan to heal the economy, except to tell everyone, hey, it's going great. And no plan for the border except to keep repeating it's secure, which, of course, it's not. Dodge every question. Dodge every concern Americans have. That's the strategy they have. There is no other strategy making an appearance on Capitol Hill for this administration right now. Listen to this.
37% of registered voters, just 37%, approve of the president's handling of the economy. He's at a 56% disapproval, the highest of his presidency. And 74% of registered voters say they have major or moderate concerns about the president's age and mental fitness. How troubling is that?
Here's what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on exactly what you just asked me, right? The first question, which is how do we continue to support the workers, right? We're not going to get into the litigation of the negotiations here, but what we're going to do is continue to show how much this president is working for American families.
Right, we're not going to get involved in negotiations, but we're going to walk the picket line with them. I think that's pretty clear. You're taking a position there, Karine, but she wouldn't answer that. There is one person, as you can imagine, quite pleased with the latest polling numbers, especially those from the Washington Post, ABC News, showing Joe Biden with a paltry 37% approval rating and Donald Trump winning by 10 points. And with everything going on, I think that poll is on the money. Donald Trump on his way to winning a second term is the way this looks. Listen to this.
A new ABC Washington Post national poll finds that in a hypothetical rematch between Trump and President Biden, Trump wins by 10 points.
We're leading by a lot, according to the Washington Post, ABC, against probably the worst president, definitely the worst president, I'd say, in the history of our country.
And that's hard to argue with. Joe Biden is so weak, so out of touch, so incapable of having a conversation or even knowing where he is on the stage. It's embarrassing for this country. It's gotten to the point that it's so embarrassing that Donald Trump is winning with people 35 and under. Think about that. One of the strong areas for Democrat voters over the years, young people, rejecting Joe Biden and embracing Donald Trump. Black voters, Hispanic voters, single women moving to Donald Trump because of the policies that he had in place before Joe Biden stumbled into the White House. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about that Ford plant closing, the EV plant. It's the Steve Gruber Show. All right, good to have you back now. As we've been talking about from the top of the program today, a huge announcement from Ford Motor Company yesterday saying that the Blue Oval Battery Park is basically on ice at this point. $3.5 billion development supported by Governor Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, supported by the MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Council, and others, all on board with this, even though there were a lot of concerns about the connections of the Chinese Communist Party. Well, out of nowhere, Ford Motor Company says they're pausing construction on this $3.5 billion facility. One of the most outspoken critics of this and other plants like it in Michigan and across the country has been Pete Hoekstra, former House Intelligence Committee chair, former member of Congress for 18 years from Michigan. He's back with me today. Pete, I just talked to you yesterday, and man, what a surprise this is. What do you know? Where did this come from? What do you make of it?
Well, I mean, this project has been going downhill over the last 4 or 5 months. Start with recognizing this technology is not ready for prime time. The publicity stunts that we're engaged in with Jim Farley and Gretchen, how do I forget? Not Gretchen. There's name.
Gretchen Whitmer.
Jennifer.
Yeah.
Our Secretary of Energy.
I got you. Secretary of Energy, yeah. Jennifer Granholm, the former governor, in cahoots with the current governor, Gretchen Whitmer. Yeah, we get all of these people together on the same page. They're all telling us this is a great way to go. You're exactly right. The technology is nowhere near ready. And all of a sudden, Ford, this is a $3.5 billion plan. By the way, about $1 billion of those dollars coming from Michigan taxpayer and Michigan sources to set this thing up. It was going to create 2,500 jobs, but then we found out half of those jobs wouldn't be Michigan people, they'd be Chinese nationals. That's just one of the problems.
Right. And then you put along with that, and Ford comes, imagine this, Ford Motor, right, comes out and says, we're going to pause this until we figure out whether we can actually make money doing this. Excuse me. You're getting billions of dollars of federal and state money, and now you're going to actually step back and do due diligence. The bottom line is nobody did due diligence on this project. It was just chasing federal dollars. It was Ford didn't do due diligence. The MEDC didn't. The state legislature didn't do it. The local government at Marshall didn't do it. This raises all kinds of questions about what was going on here. Now we know why they put out non-disclosure agreements for these projects, because maybe there was nothing to disclose. Nobody had done any work.
Right, and it's not the only plant. This is one of several being worked on in Michigan. Now, there's one you've been working closely with. This is in Marshall. The Ford Blue Oval factory was in Marshall, about, 45 minutes south of Lansing. About 45 minutes the other way, or maybe a touch more, is the city of Big Rapids. Ferris State University is there. And this plant called Goshen, this company called Goshen, building an EV plant there. You had a meeting last night where concerned citizens got together. I'm going to guess a lot of happy people there, because Goshen is another company with direct ties to the Chinese Communist Party, and they're setting up up shop in these massive farm fields, right? Building new factories. Michigan has lots of buildings you could put EVs in, down in Detroit or elsewhere. Same's true across this country, and yet for some reason they're all hell-bent, these Chinese battery companies, on building on giant chunks of farmland. What happened last night?
Well, last night, the group that I'm a part of, we announced that we are potentially suing Goshen for the Endangered Species Act. Again, because there's been no due diligence. There was no environmental impact statement questioning the water, the amount of water that they're going to be pulling out of the water table, impact on the environment, and those types of things. And so, we've done the background on environmental issues, and there's an Invasive Species Act. So the process you have to go through, you have to give the company 60 days notice that you are going to sue them for the impact that they're having on the environment. We announced that yesterday. We're looking at other legal initiatives to stop this plant. I think what you're seeing in Marshall, what you are seeing in Big Rapids, is you can't beat grassroots. In November, there's going to be a recall election to recall the supervisor of the township where this plant is going to be built. We're recalling 5 of the members of the township board. This community does not want this plant. They don't want a Chinese communist plant in the middle of their community. And there's nothing better than working with grassroots against the elites who are being sponsored by the politicians in Lansing and the politicians in Washington, and also by corporate greed. In Goshen, the Right Place, a business organization out of Grand Rapids, is getting $50 million for this project. It's absolutely outrageous. Plus these are folks that are on the MEDC board. They're handing out Michigan taxpayer dollars to who? To themselves. Same thing happened in Marshall. And it's Ford doesn't care. Lansing doesn't care, because guess what? They're not spending their own money. They're not being careful with it. They're just throwing money at these projects because it's taxpayer money, and they're never held accountable.
Yeah, they're spending your money and mine, Pete, both here at the state level and the federal level. This is a huge win for the grassroots, as you pointed out, and a huge setback for the whole Green New Deal nonsense of spending taxpayers into oblivion here in America and in Western Europe. We'll stay with this story, Pete. It's a big deal. Joe Biden coming to walk the picket line, apparently, with UAW members today. It'll take about 3 steps if he can make it that far. They might bring him a wheelchair. I'm not sure. But he'll be there, and one has to wonder where we go next. But I appreciate the update. We'll find out what happens to Goshen next. The Blue Oval facility, obviously, on ice. Pete Hoekstra, thank you, sir.
More announcements coming soon.
There you have it. All right. Still to come, we're going to talk about the economy with Nick Hopwood and so much more coming up here this day. Big news. That Goshen plant could be next, but that Blue Oval plant being idled, if you will. Construction stopped. Huge news. National news. We'll be right back. What's wrong? Well, how bad is it for Joe Biden? I'll tell you how bad it is. You know, we're talking about it here. In all of these EV deals like this that are falling apart, Ford Motor Company lost $4.5 billion already this year on this EV transition. The infrastructure is nowhere near being ready. The Ford CEO couldn't even drive a Ford Lightning across much of the country because he couldn't find a charging station. Jennifer Granholm couldn't find charging stations when she tried to drive an electric vehicle across the country. It's a joke. China building a brand new coal-fired power plant weekly now. It was once every couple of weeks. Now it's weekly. But yet China's the big leader, according to John Kerry, when it comes to green energy. And how bad is it? Well, there's a congressman from Minnesota. You probably heard his name before. His name's Dean Phillips. Dean Phillips says he will not rule out a challenge to Joe Biden. And so what if he does or doesn't? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a better decision for the Democrats, better decision for the country than Joe Biden would ever be. And having said that, none of that really matters. Looking at the new polling for Donald Trump, up by 5 and 10 points over Joe Biden. The new polling numbers showing that the former president is doing remarkably well against a sitting president. In fact, I don't know that I've ever seen such a thing in my lifetime. And of course, the polling wasn't the same back when Jimmy Carter was president and Ronald Reagan creamed him in 1980. But that's what we're en route for right now, is a crushing of bad policies, even with the mass mail-in ballots. You can't stop a movement like this that is rejecting the policies so soundly across the board. Meanwhile, don't forget to support Birch Gold. Birch Gold here is the place to invest your money if you're not sure about what's going to happen. If the demand for the dollar weakens and the buying power of the dollar continues to weaken, Birch Gold will be there to help you. They're busier than ever. Investors and savers looking to harness the power of physical gold held in tax-sheltered IRAs. All you have to do to find out more, text Gruber to 989898. You'll get a free information kit on gold. Thousands of happy customers, an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, and countless 5-star reviews. You can count on Birch Gold to help you navigate transitioning an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. That's right. Text Gruber to 989898. Right now, find out. You got nothing to lose. Coming up, Nick Hopwood will be here. We're talking more about the economy, how it's impacting you, what these big changes might mean. Don't go anywhere. It's the Steve Gruber Show. All right, back to it now. Glad you're here. Just such a busy day, as you know, all these things we're covering right now. Number one, though, is Bidenomics. I mean, honestly, it's the economy that affects everyone, and some people not so well right now. Nick Hopwood is a certified financial planner, founder and president of Peak Wealth. You can always find him at peakwm.com. Nick, welcome back.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, we were talking about this in the break, man. It just feels like we're at a tough time in the economy, tough time with government, tough time being, confident in what's coming down the road, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel like it's the movie Speed with Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves. We got this bus. We have to stay over 50 miles per hour or it's going to blow up. Or we got the concern about running out of gas. We could crash. And I feel like that's what we're dealing with the government shutdown right now.
Yeah. Well, the government shutdown doesn't concern me terribly. I mean, I've been through a number of these. So have you. And a partial shutdown, so it happens. Does anybody really get bothered by it? Not really. Nobody loses any money because we get to pay the bill when it's over every time, Nick. They never lose any money in the process. They get to spend it all anyway. But you wanted to talk about something pretty important today. Tax planning, charitable planning. Giving to charities has always been kind of tricky. Is it tax deductible? Is it not? How does it work? Help me out.
Sure. So after the Trump tax cuts of 2017, most people are not itemizing their taxes. And that means if you make a charitable contribution to your favorite charity or church, you're not getting any tax benefits. And so one of the things that has really come to the forefront with tax planning and charities is a qualified charitable distribution. And this is when folks who are age 73 taking their required minimum distributions, instead of taking that distribution and then writing a check to church, just have your IRA send the money directly to the church, and you can get the benefit without itemizing your taxes.
So that's interesting. So if I have an inherited IRA from my parents when they passed away, and I have a required minimum distribution, if that went straight to a charity, how would that work?
So you fill out a form with your custodian, whether it's Charles Schwab or Fidelity, and set up the money to go directly to the charity, and you don't touch it, right? It's kind of like a rollover where it's not you're not taking possession of the funds. The money goes directly to the church, and therefore it stays off of your 1040, which means less of your Social Security is taxable, which means you're saving taxes even though you're not itemizing.
Interesting. That's a pretty good plan right there. All right, so let's talk about this. This is a question I think about, millions of people think about. Am I ready to retire? Am I ready to retire? How do I know? Nick, how do I know if I've worked long enough, saved enough, can live the lifestyle I want for whatever period of time? How do I know if I'm ready to retire? How do you gauge that?
Well, I think there's 4 questions you have to ask yourself, and most people get it right. The first question is money. And that's where we come in to help you make sure that you have enough money so you won't run out. But there's a few other questions you want to ask as well, such as, have I accomplished what I want in my career? So a lot of people, they might hate their job, and that's not an issue. But if you love what you do and you have goals, right, with your career, you might want to stick around to see those out. And then thirdly, this is a huge question, what am I going to do with my 40 plus hours per week? And a lot of people, retire to the couch, and that's not a good situation. And then finally, the 4th question is my spouse on board?
Yeah, well, that's important. And you need to have a united front, as they say, right? I mean, you have to be on the same page. Because if I think, well, I could live kind of a Spartan lifestyle, and the spouse is like, no, I don't want to live a Spartan lifestyle, that leaves you kind of at odds, doesn't it?
It sure does. And, a lot of times one spouse works, one spouse stays at home, and now you're kind of coming home full time and invading their territory, right? So, you really have to be on the same page there.
Right. All right. So let's talk about this. What are the 5 stages of retirement? You've got it here for me, and I want to go through these. And I know we've got, some supporting information for those watching on television today. What are those 5 stages of retirement, Nick?
Well, I think a lot of people can relate to the first, which is anticipation. It's kind of like, you're a senior in high school. You have a little bit of senioritis. You're anticipating what's coming next. The dreams of going to the beach and playing golf and sleeping in. And that's a wonderful feeling. And then number two is the honeymoon, which, for a lot of people, this is their entire retirement period. And for others, sadly, it's a short amount of time. The idea of, oh boy, I get to go to the beach again today. Well, there's got to be more to life than leisure. And so some people fall into step 3, which is disenchantment. And that's kind of like a depression stage. And not everyone falls into this, but many people do. And did you know that men over the age of 70, this is very sad, Steve, they have the highest suicide rate in our country. And it goes unnoticed because it doesn't make the news. But a lot of people fall into this category. We have to go to step 4, which is rejuvenation. We have to get inspired by something, to get us out of bed in the morning, to get us off the couch. And then we can reach fulfillment, which oftentimes is related with connectedness, personal growth and development, and giving back. Don't retire, graduate to the next level.
Yeah, do something, be connected, be involved. Maybe it is a charity. We talked about charities here a moment ago. Maybe it's something in your community. Maybe it's your church, whatever it might be. Be involved, be connected. And I didn't know that statistic about suicide for people over 70, but there it is. All right, real quick before we leave today, we got a couple of minutes here. Nick, let's just talk about the things at hand today that we have no control over whatsoever, that being, interest rates and inflation and everything else. What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, well, we're seeing a little bit of reacceleration with the inflation, primarily due to energy prices and the cost of gas. And so, the Fed did hold rates steady last week, but they're talking a tough talk, like they're going to hold them higher for longer and maybe one more raise in November. And as a result, interest rates have spiked to new highs. Money markets are still holding steady at around 5.25%, but the 10-year rates, the longer-term bonds, have spiked. So our investors have experienced just a terrible fixed income environment, with now bonds down 3 calendar years in a row. It's never happened in the history of our country.
Interesting. What do you think is going to happen then? It's never happened. What does it indicate? I think that we've talked about this in previous weeks. The Fed probably going to jack up interest one more quarter point before the year is over. Already in an economy that I don't think can quite take it, but we've got about 30 seconds here. Give me the last word.
Well, in historical times when the Fed raises rates, the bond market rates peak at or about the same time of the final rate hike. So we're very close. So from my point of view as an investor, I'm looking at the last 3 years, and it's painful for my fixed income, but I'm very excited because the silver lining going forward is now we can earn 5, 6, and 7% on our conservative fixed income in the future.
Well, that is good news. All right, Nick, you laid a lot out for us there today, a lot of it there. Nick Hopwood, certified financial planner, founder and president of Peak Wealth. You can find him at peakwm.com, or if you're watching on TV, take that QR code, take a picture with your phone. For those of you that are skilled in such things, there's the QR code, take you right to peakwm.com. Nick, thank you as always.
Thank you, Steve. Have a great day.
You too. Sheriff Mark Lamb of Arizona with me next to talk about his run for a Senate seat. Don't go anywhere. If you didn't see this, just yesterday, 11,000 illegals crossed the border yesterday, an all-time record for a single day of encounters at the border. It's an unbelievable number. We had more than 44,000 come through in 4 days here last week. The numbers are out of control. And yet the Biden administration will say, oh, the border's secure. No, it's not. One man that knows that for sure is Sheriff Mark Lamb. He is a sheriff in Pinal County, Arizona, has been since 2017, and now he's running for a U.S. Senate seat there in Arizona, looking to take the seat currently held by Senator Kyrsten Sinema. Sheriff, good to have you back.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me on today.
I mean, you look at these numbers, Sheriff, these are unprecedented. The Democrats like to use that word a lot, but they use it in a reckless fashion. This truly is unprecedented, and you listen to Karine Jean-Pierre or Alejandro Mayorkas, and they'll say, oh, the border's secure. It's absolute nonsense. Secure. Based on what?
Exactly. I try not to listen to either one of those two because all they do is lie and gaslight the American people. The reality is, you talked about it, 11,000 people yesterday. The border is the most unsecure it's been in a long time, if not ever. We're hitting numbers that we've never hit before. So I don't know how they can, in good conscience, say that the border is secure. And it's not just that the border's not secure. Look at these videos of what's coming through. My biggest issue lately has been that these are military-age men coming from a lot of different countries throughout the world, countries from where people do not love America or the American people. So that concerns me deeply.
Well, you see a spike in disease as well. We're not vetting anybody, not for military-aged men, not for potential illness that they bring to our communities because they're being spread all over the country. Because from El Paso, where the Democrat mayor now has declared an emergency, to New York City, where Kathy Hochul is calling in the National Guard because they have too many illegals there, 100,000. I mean, compare that to the number of illegals living currently in Arizona or Texas or New Mexico or California for sure. They don't have any idea, and they keep saying, oh, it's fine. I mean, it's crushing places like the hospital in Yuma. I mean, they're losing $25 million a month. You can't sustain that, can you?
Well, no, you can't sustain it. And I bet you that number's gone up even more. And what we're seeing are numbers that are equal to the state of Arizona, basically, over the last 2.5 years since this administration took over. Imagine that, 6-7 million people that we know of. How many do we not know about that came into this country? You know, the Tucson sector, which is the sector that I'm in, leads the way every month. We certainly lead the way in gotaways. So this is a problem. And most of that funnels through my county at some point. Even though I'm not on the border, we experience a tremendous amount of trafficking that comes through my county before it goes into Phoenix. And, you know, I go all over Arizona, and I realize that Arizonans are tired of it. Americans are tired of it. New Yorkers, all across this country. And we've got to do something about it, which is why I recognize we need a proven conservative fighter, and that's why I'm jumping in the U.S. Senate race here in Arizona.
Right. Well, here's the thing. The population of Arizona is about 7.4, 7.5 million. That's what the Census Bureau counted. You look at where we are with the number of illegals that have come into this country just since Joe Biden took office 32 months ago. You're about equal with the entire population of the entire state of Arizona. In fact, if you reach 10 million, which is the projection through 4 years of Joe Biden, that's larger than the population of 40 states. 40 states don't have 10 million people in it, and we're letting these people in to go where? To be paid how? To get a job how? It's insanity to find. We're committing suicide with an invasion, are we not?
Absolutely. We're committing financial suicide. This is the greatest national security threat to America, not just the terrorists that we allow in or the people with bad intentions. We are allowing fentanyl to come in. We are seeing deaths of Americans, up to fentanyl poisonings of Americans above 100,000 a year. That alone should be alarming to the American people. I will tell you, they're destroying America day by day with the amount of people coming in here, the amount of drugs coming in here, and this administration doesn't seem to care one bit about it.
Or they're supporting it, which is impossible because you can't be this oblivious without having some support for what's happening. So let me shift gears real quick. I got a couple of minutes here with you still, Sheriff. Sheriff Mark Lamb here with me. Let's talk about Bidenomics. I think Bidenomics is the worst, PR campaign since Bud Light gave a guy a beer in a bathtub. That's what I believe. It's a terrible marketing plan. Bidenomics doesn't work for anybody. It doesn't work for folks in Arizona. It doesn't work for people in Michigan where I live or anywhere in between. It's a disaster. Well, inflation's under control. Really? Cumulative prices are up almost 20%. Milk, eggs, gasoline, electric bill, whatever it is. People are getting crushed in this country, and we've got to stop just spending like idiots, frankly.
Well, they are. They're spending like drunken sailors. They're giving more and more money to Ukraine, which I think the majority of Americans are very unhappy with. If you don't have it, you can't give it, because if you don't have it, that means you've got to go out and borrow it. And when you borrow it, there's interest rates that come with that. And those interest rates are passed on to us, the American people. We are the ones that are paying for this spending in Washington, D.C. And then you go over to energy independence. We've lost that. We're dependent on other countries now. And if you don't know, it takes energy to make it, to ship it, and to sell it. And when those costs go up, they indefinitely pass those costs on to the consumer, which is why the average American, like myself, are feeling the crunch of what we call Bidenomics. There's one reason I'm glad they call it Bidenomics, because throughout history it will prove to show it was horrible, and I'm glad that Biden's name will be attached to it.
I agree with that. I got about 30 seconds left. Here's the most important single thing that I think people forget about, and they shouldn't. In the midst of all of this, the most important reason that you need to be a United States Senator is to defend the United States Supreme Court, because if anybody leaves that court, we need more conservatives on that court. I'll give you 30 seconds for the last word.
Not only do we need to defend the Supreme Court, we've got to defend freedom. This administration is systematically taking away American freedom every day. And we need a proven conservative fighter in Washington, D.C. that's going to stand up for the people and restore this country to its greatness of what it used to be. So please come support me at SheriffLambForSenate.com. We've got to take it back. It's we the people that need to take this country back.
SheriffLambForSenate.com. Nicely done, Sheriff. Always appreciate you being here. I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you, Steve. God bless you.
There you have it. Sheriff Mark Lamb, Arizona. Good man and a good American and a great hat. Hey, I can't beat the hat. I'll take a break and be right back. you draw the line? I mean, we see all this nonsense, and we see these things being told to us about, pick your topic, whatever it is, and you're getting buffaloed and BS'd all the time. But where do you draw the line? And I'm going to say this about climate change. How many of you have dogs and cats there with you? How many of you have dogs and cats with you today at the house, wherever, right? You have your pet owner. Most Americans that I know are pet. I happen to have both, plus chickens just for sport, which will be illegal at some point too. But the climate change Nazis are coming for your pets. Yeah, they are at some point. And I got an article here from CNN. Barkley and Whiskers and those animals, they create climate change because cats, for example, have to have meat in their diet, so therefore they're eating meat. A lot of the dog food brands have meat in the kibble or whatever. So they being the climate change zealots, the climate change Nazis, say that we've got to get rid of pet food. We've got to get rid of pets altogether. So I ask you again, where do you draw the line? You let that percolate for just a little bit, and you tell me, where do you draw the line when it comes to you're going to get rid of your dog, your cat, to save the planet? Is that what you're willing to do? Because I'm guessing you're probably not willing to do that, because I'm certainly not willing to give up my pets for some half-baked idea about something that isn't even real. All right, here we go. Don't forget to save money using actual green energy from the well in your yard. That well water can save you. Well Connect, a hybrid geothermal system that connects to your existing heating and cooling system, and by using the renewable energy in the well in your yard, Well Connect helps you to save up to 70% on your heating and cooling. If you use propane, heating oil, natural gas, even wood, you could save big money on your bills. Find out if the well in your yard should be a Well Connect hybrid geothermal system. Again, connecting to your existing furnace and air conditioner doesn't replace it. It helps it to become a hell of a lot better. WellConnectGeo.com, WellConnectGeo.com. Oh, and by the way, from now through the end of the year, if you get scheduled, if you get booked to buy a WellConnect, you can save $750 on that project because you're listening here today. $750 savings. Go to WellConnectGeo.com right now. Support the people that support this program, and hey, support your own wallet, your own pocketbook. There it is. In the next hour, we're going to talk about vulnerable patients and transgender ideology and how it puts people at risk, their lives at risk. Coming up on the Steve Gruber Show.